Once, in a small village at the edge of the forest, there lived a poor man named Tom. He had nothing but a tiny house with a leaky roof, a few clothes that were worn thin, and a heart full of dreams. Tom worked as a laborer, doing odd jobs for the people in the village. But no matter how hard he worked, he never seemed to have enough to get ahead. One cold evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned dark, Tom finished his work for the day and headed home. His feet were sore and his stomach growled with hunger. He had a little bread left from yesterday, but it wasn't enough to fill him up. Still, he walked home slowly, wishing for better days. As he neared his house, Tom noticed something strange. The door, which he always kept locked, was slightly open. He frowned. He was sure he had locked it before he left. A feeling of unease washed over him, but he shrugged it off. Maybe the wind had blown it open, he thought. But as Tom stepped inside, the darkness of the house felt different. It felt heavier, colder, as though someone had been there. He called out, his voice shaking, "Hello? Is anyone there?" There was no answer. Only the sound of the wind outside. Tom's heart raced. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't explain why. He stepped further into the room, his eyes adjusting to the dim light of the single candle he had left. His small wooden table was overturned, and the chair lay broken on the floor. His small bed, where he usually slept, had been disturbed. The sheets were thrown off, and his pillow was missing. Tom's stomach twisted in fear. Someone had been here. Someone had searched through his things. He turned quickly, his eyes scanning the room for anything out of place. That's when he saw a small, dark object on the floor near the window. He bent down and picked it up. It was a small, shiny key, nothing like any key he had ever seen before. His mind raced. Who would leave a key in his house? And why? Suddenly, he heard a low whisper coming from the darkness. Tom froze, his breath caught in his throat. The whisper was faint, but it seemed to call his name, soft but clear. Tom. He quickly turned toward the sound, but there was nothing. The room was empty. The whispering stopped as suddenly as it had started, but Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something was in the house with him, something he couldn't see. He held the key tightly in his hand, not knowing what to do next. Should he leave? Should he run to the village and tell someone? But something inside him told him to stay, to figure out what was happening. Tom walked slowly to the window, keeping his eyes on the shadows around him. He opened the window just a crack, letting the cool night air rush in. The whisper had come from somewhere inside his house, but now everything was still. Too still. As he stood there, a sudden thought struck him. The key. What if it opened something? What if it was the key to a hidden door or a secret room? With shaking hands, he moved back into the room, looking for a place where the key might fit. He checked the cupboard, but it was empty. He tried the drawers, but they were locked, and he didn't have any other keys. Then he saw a small, wooden panel hidden behind a piece of furniture. It looked like part of the wall, but it wasn't. His heart skipped a beat. Could this be it? Could this be the secret? Tom knelt down and ran his fingers along the edges of the panel. Sure enough, there was a small, hidden keyhole. He slid the key into it, and to his surprise, it turned. The panel creaked open, revealing a small, dark room beyond. Tom's breath came faster. What could be in there? What had he just unlocked? He stepped into the hidden room, and as he did, the temperature seemed to drop even more. He could feel the coldness seep into his bones. The room was bare except for a small, dusty chest in the corner. Tom's curiosity grew. He knew he had to open it. With trembling hands, he bent down and opened the chest. Inside, there were old papers, yellowed with age, and a small, worn book. Tom took the book in his hands and opened it. The pages were filled with strange words and symbols he didn't understand. But then, near the back of the book, he found a page with a drawing. It was a drawing of a man, his own face, looking back at him. Tom gasped and dropped the book in shock. His mind spun. Who had drawn this? Why was it here in his house? And how could it be his face? As he stumbled back, trying to make sense of everything, he heard the whisper again. This time it was louder, almost like it was right beside him. Tom. Tom. He turned around, his heart pounding in his chest, and saw a shadow move in the corner of the room. A tall figure, dark and unmoving. "Who's there?" Tom cried out, his voice shaky. The figure didn't answer. It just stood there, silent and still. Tom's eyes widened in fear. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. It was as if the shadow had frozen him in place. Then, without warning, the shadow stepped forward, and Tom felt an icy hand brush against his shoulder. He gasped and spun around, but there was no one there. The whispering stopped. Tom's heart was racing, his breath shallow and quick. He ran out of the room, slamming the panel shut behind him. The house felt empty again, but Tom couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching him. He grabbed the small key and ran out into the night. The village was quiet, and no one was awake. He didn't stop to explain to anyone. He ran, his heart thumping in his chest, his mind filled with questions he couldn't answer. And as he ran through the darkness, the whisper followed him. Tom, Tom.